A steel lamppost stands at the edge of a supermarket car park. The light has been dead for 11 years. A crow lands on the arm, turns its head, and looks down at a road nobody has driven on. Take our species out of the world, and something has to take the top of it. The question is what, and the answer is not the one you would pick. The bird is not waiting for anything. It is not a symbol. It is an animal that has found a good perch above a place that used to be full of food, and it is doing what it has done every morning of its life. The difference is that this morning, nobody is coming. There are 3 problems standing between any animal on this planet and the thing we did. Every candidate you could name fails at least one of them, and most fail too. I am not going to tell you what the 3 problems are yet, because the order matters. What I will tell you is that they are not what people usually guess. Not language. Not curiosity, not even intelligence exactly. This is a story about a vacancy, and about the only lineage alive today that has made a start, a rough, partial, unfinished start. On all 3. How long does a road last? Not long. Asphalt is a skin, and skins fail from the inside. Water gets into a hairline crack, freezes, lifts, a seed lands in the gap. Roots do the rest. Inside 20 years, the car park outside that supermarket is a meadow with a hard gray floor under it. Inside a century, it is a young wood, and the only straight line left in the whole scene is the lamppost, because galvanized steel is stubborn. Rust starts where it always starts, at the bolt plate down at the base, and bleeds a rust-orange stain into the grass. That last part is not a measurement. The materials are real, and the timescale is real. The picture is a reconstruction, and I will tell you every time we cross that line. Here is the thing people get wrong about the world after us. They imagine it as a release, nature, unclenched. It is not. What we leave behind is a poorer planet than the one we found, and the poverty outlasts us by a very long way. Extinction is not an event, it is a debt, and the payments come due for thousands of years after the borrower has gone. The first 10,000 years are not a golden age. They are a hospital. Pollinator networks that took millions of years to knit together do not reassemble because the tractors stopped. Soils that were farmed to exhaustion do not refill overnight. Species we moved around the planet stay moved and go on rearranging things long after the last ship rots. Whatever inherits this world inherits a damaged one and inherits it slowly. But they are also, for the first time in about 300,000 years, an opening. Jan Zelasevich is a paleobiologist at Leicester, and in 2014, he made a point that sounds obvious for about 4 seconds, and then does not stop being interesting. While we are here, it is extremely difficult for any other super-intelligent animal to appear. Not because we would fight it, because we would never let it get started. As he put it, humans have been quite good at removing the competition, which means the vacancy is the whole story. Not a detail, the precondition. Nothing on this list gets to begin while we are still in the room. And when a room like that empties, the planet has form. In 2019, Tyler Lyson's team published a run of rock at Coral Bluffs in Colorado, a section of ground that happens to record, layer by layer, the first million years after the asteroid. Within roughly 100,000 years of the impact, mammal species richness had doubled. By 300,000 years, the biggest mammals were 3 times the size of the biggest survivors. By 700,000, the ceiling had gone up 35-fold. Rat-sized to sheep-sized, in less time than the crater took to properly cool. 700,000 years. Hold that number, because this episode is going to spend 10 million, and I want you to understand how absurdly generous that is. So the throne empties, the world convalesces, and somewhere in the wreckage a lineage starts doing something with its hands. Except that is the first problem, and it is a much harder problem than it sounds. Because hands are not common. Hands, in the sense of a limb, precise enough to build a thing that builds another thing, have evolved almost nowhere. And the animals that have them are, right now, in more trouble than we are. Who would you have bet on? Almost everybody picks the same horse, and it is a reasonable pick. The great apes, chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, orangutans. They are the closest living things to us. They have hands with opposable thumbs and fine motor control. They use tools. They teach those tools to their young, and different populations do it differently, which is the beginning of culture. If you were writing the succession on paper, the paper would say chimpanzee. The paper is wrong, and it is wrong for a reason that has nothing to do with intelligence. Look at the numbers. As of the last full conservation assessments, there are fewer than 250,000 chimpanzees left in the wild, and a little over 100,000 gorillas. No other great ape populations comes close to 100,000. Those figures are more than a decade old now, which matters, but not in the direction that helps. Put every wild chimpanzee alive into one place, and they would not fill a mid-sized city. That is not a species poised to inherit anything. That is a species being carried. Every one of them is forest-dependent, slow to breed, geographically cornered, and sitting inside the exact habitat we are dismantling fastest. The uncomfortable arithmetic is this: the most likely heirs are on a trajectory to go before we do. There is a grim logic to it. The vacancy only opens when we are gone. But the thing that removes us is unlikely to be gentle with 100,000 forest specialists on the way past. And the same objection takes down the rest of the primate bench on the way past. Orangutans are down to 2 islands. Bonobos exist in 1 basin. Every animal on the list that has the hands has also had its world cut into fragments, and a fragmented population is a population that cannot afford to experiment. So people reach for the opposite kind of animal. The survivor, the rat. Rodents are the correct answer to a different question. They are the answer to who lives through it. They breed fast, eat anything, tolerate us, and are already on every continent we are. If the test were endurance, the rat wins in a walk. But the test is not endurance. Nothing in the rodent record, not tool manufacture, not planning for a need it does not currently have, not modeling what another animal is thinking, suggests the equipment, and you cannot substitute population for cognition. A billion rats is a billion rats. It is not one mind that can hold a plan. Which raises the question the rest of this depends on. How fast can a brain actually grow if the world starts rewarding it? Because if the answer is very slowly, then 10 million years is nothing, and this whole exercise is a daydream. Park that. We come back to it with a number. So the legitimate heir is broke, and the survivor is empty-handed. Both obvious answers are off the table inside 5 minutes, which is roughly how long it takes serious people to get to the same place. And this is the point where the specialists stop agreeing with each other. Most people watching this are not subscribed. If the question of who gets the planet next is your kind of question, that is easily fixed. Now, back to the lamppost and to the candidate a serious zoologist put forward in public. What did Oxford actually say? Ask a zoologist who takes over after us, and you will hear the octopus. In February of 2026, Tim Coulson, a professor of zoology at Oxford, named it in public. Intelligence. Complex problem solving. Communication through color. And an ability to manipulate objects that, in raw dexterity, embarrasses most primates. He is not being provocative. He is being serious, and if you have ever watched one work, you know why. An octopus is the closest thing this planet has to an intelligence that evolved on a different world. 8 limbs, each with something like local autonomy. Skin that can change color and texture in 1/3 of a second. Neurons distributed through the arms rather than centralized in a skull. It solves puzzles, opens containers, recognizes individual keepers, and carries objects around for later use, which is a quiet way of saying it has a concept of later. Name your problem, and the octopus has an answer for it. Manipulation? 8 of them. Innovation? Demonstrated. Raw processing? More neurons than a dog. Coulson himself names the first obstacle. No skeleton. On land, a body with no internal frame is slow, vulnerable, and constrained. You cannot run, you cannot carry much, and you cannot fight gravity for long. He treats this as an engineering problem the animal would have to solve. Fair enough. 10 million years is a long time to grow a stiffening rod. But there is a second obstacle, and it is not an engineering problem. It is a wall. Octopuses are similparous. They breed once, and then they die. The male goes not long after mating. The female does something worse. She lays her clutch and then stops eating. A structure behind her eyes, called the optic gland, begins releasing a cascade that shuts down her digestive and salivary glands. And she spends her last weeks guarding eggs while her own body consumes itself. By the time those eggs hatch, she is dead or nearly so. Every octopus that has ever lived worked the whole thing out alone. Sit with that, because it is the hinge of this entire episode. Not one hatchling in the history of the lineage has ever met its mother. There is no lesson. No demonstration, no corrected mistake, no inherited trick, no we do it this way here. The single most alien and inventive intelligence on Earth has been rebooting from zero, every generation, for hundreds of millions of years. And that is the third problem. It has been standing here the whole time. Call it the library. Can what one animal learns survive the animal that learned it? Because everything we built rests on that and nothing else. Not one human being invented the wheel, agriculture, metallurgy, and antibiotics. 10,000 generations did, each one starting from where the last one stopped. Take away the handover, and you do not get a slower civilization. You get no civilization forever, no matter how clever the individuals are. Think about what you actually know how to do, and then think about how much of it you worked out yourself. Almost none of it. You were handed a language you did not invent in a building you did not build, by people repeating something they were told. Your intelligence is the smallest part of what you know. The octopus is the proof. It is the smartest thing in the sea, and it has been getting nowhere for a very long time, and the reason is not its brain. It is its funeral, which leaves the field in an odd state. Coulson, in 2026, says octopus. Zalasievich, in 2014, describes the vacancy and declines to fill it. Those are two of the most quoted people on this exact question, and they do not have the same short list, and it is worth noticing that neither of them nominated a bird. I am not going to referee that for you. I am going to give you the 3 problems and let you score it yourself. Hands. Fire, the library. Start with hands. And start with the animal that looks like it already solved everything. And did not. There is already a civilization on this planet that is not ours, and it is older than the Himalayas. Leafcutter ants farm. Not metaphorically. They cultivate a specific fungus on a substrate they harvest, weed it of competing molds, dose it with antibiotic bacteria they carry on their bodies, and dispose of the waste in dedicated chambers. Termites build climate-controlled towers with passive ventilation that architects have copied. There are ant species that keep livestock, species that take slaves, species that wage organized territorial war with front lines and reserves. The whole apparatus has been running for tens of millions of years, and it is going absolutely nowhere. Because the intelligence in a colony is not in any animal in it. It is in the arrangement. A worker follows a short list of local rules, and the sophistication appears at the level of the crowd. The way a wave appears in water without any drop of water intending it. That is an extraordinary thing to watch and a fatal thing to be. Nothing in the nest can picture an object that does not exist yet. A superorganism can farm. It cannot invent because there is nobody in there to have the idea. So the first problem is not really about hands. It is about a hand with a mind on the other end of it, which is where the bird lands. Start with the hardware, because the hardware is genuinely strange. In 2016, Surin Olkovich and colleagues did something nobody had properly done. They counted, not brain weight, actual neurons in birds and in primates, the same way in both. The result broke a piece of received wisdom that had stood for a century. Songbird and parrot brains hold about twice as many neurons, as a mammal brain of the same weight. In the pallium, the forebrain, the part that does the thinking, avian neuron density runs 3 to 4 times higher than in the primate equivalent. Same weight of tissue. 3 to 4 times the wiring. And then the comparison that should genuinely stop you. A common raven's entire brain weighs about 10 grams. Its pallium holds roughly 1.2 billion neurons. A capuchin monkey's brain weighs about 39 grams, nearly 4 times heavier, and its cortex, the layer that does the same job, holds around 1.1 billion. A walnut outcounting an orange. The bird brain was never a stripped-down version of ours. It is a second solution, engineered to a different specification. Everything a mind needs, in a package light enough to fly. Hardware is not behavior, though. So, can it plan? In 2020, Marcus Bokel's group ran New Caledonian crows through a task where the useful tool and the moment of use were separated in time. The animal had to choose an object now for a job happening 10 minutes from now, and pass over a tool that had paid off before, and pass over food that was immediately available. They chose correctly. 3 years earlier, Kankabadai and Matthias Osvath had shown ravens doing the same class of thing, including bartering with a human for a future reward, at a level that parallels great apes. Not memory. Not habit. Selecting for a future that is not here yet, against the pull of a reward that is. Then there is the tool itself, and this is where the story usually gets told badly. So let me tell it properly. In 2002, a captive New Caledonian crow named Betty bent a straight piece of garden wire into a hook and used it to lift food out of a tube. Weir and Kasselnick published it, and for 14 years it circulated as a miracle. One genius bird, one flash of insight. In 2016, Christian Rutz's team went and looked at wild ones and found that bending tools is simply part of what the species does. Betty was not a prodigy. Betty was ordinary. That correction sounds like a downgrade. It is the opposite. A miracle in one animal is a fluke, and evolution cannot get hold of a fluke. A trait spread through an entire lineage is raw material. The 2016 result is worse for the legend and far better for the argument. Now put it back at the lamppost. There is a hatch at the base of the pole, hanging open, and inside it a loom of perished cable with the copper showing. A crow works a strand free with its foot braced against the plate, holds the wire against the steel, and drags its beak down the length of it until the end turns over. The tool is older than the tool's user. That is what a beak and 2 feet can already do. And the first problem is answered, not with a hand, but with a jaw that has a mind behind it. Which leaves power. because muscle is where every animal civilization stops. Has a bird ever held fire? Yes. And it is not the bird you want it to be. In northern Australia, there are 3 raptors, the black kite, the whistling kite, and the brown falcon, that hunt the edges of grass fires. That part is not unusual. Plenty of birds do. What these do is the unusual part. They go to the burning front, take a stick that is alight at one end in a talon or a beak, carry it up to a kilometer, and drop it into grass that has not caught yet. The fire is a tool. It flushes lizards, rodents, and insects out of cover and into the open, where a bird waiting above the smoke line can take them. They do it alone. They also do it in numbers, in a way that looks a great deal like several animals working the same field. This was known to Aboriginal peoples in the Northern Territory for a very long time, and it sits inside ceremony and law there. Western science arrived late. In 2017, Mark Bonta and colleagues published a study in the Journal of Ethnobiology that assembled the indigenous knowledge alongside a set of independent eyewitness accounts recorded between 2011 and 2017. Firefighters, rangers, cattle station workers, and concluded the fire spreading is deliberate. Now the correction, and it matters more than anything else in this chapter. Those are raptors. Kites and falcons. They are not crows. Corvids and birds of prey are not close relatives, and there is no evidence, none, that any crow has ever done this. If you take one sentence out of this episode, do not let it be that crows use fire, because they do not. What the firehawks establish is something narrower and, for our purposes, stronger. Birds, as a class of animal, are not locked out of fire. A feathered animal with a beak and a set of talons can pick up a burning object, transport it deliberately, and place it somewhere for an effect it wants. That is not a theoretical capability that a lineage would have to invent from scratch. Somewhere on this planet, this morning, it is a Tuesday. Whether a corvid could get from there to controlled fire, keeping it, feeding it, making it, is completely unknown, and anybody who tells you otherwise is guessing. And the gap is not small. Carrying fire is one act. Keeping it is a chain of them. Shelter it from rain, feed it before it dies, judge how much fuel is too much, and value it tomorrow enough to protect it tonight. That is not a clever moment. That is a habit that has to be held by a group and handed on. What we can say is that the door is not bolted. It is a bird-shaped door, and something with feathers has already gone through it. There is a deeper reason to take the bird seriously here, and it has to do with where that brain came from. Birds and mammals last shared an ancestor more than 300 million years ago, before the first dinosaur, before Pangea had finished assembling. Everything after that point was built independently, twice. And the two builds are not the same. Our thinking happens in a cortex, 6 layers of cells sheeted over the surface of the brain. The structure every textbook told us was the necessary substrate of higher thought. A bird has no cortex. It never evolved one. Its pallium is organized into clustered nuclei instead, a completely different architecture. Different wiring diagram, different developmental history, different hemisphere of the animal kingdom. Same result. That is what makes corvid intelligence worth more than a novelty segment. It is a second, independent demonstration that this planet can build a mind, that high cognition is not a freak accident that happened once in an African ape and would never happen again. It has already happened twice, from 2 entirely separate starting points, with 320 million years between the labs. Both of those labs sit on a planet that has never once let anything keep the top of it. Hold on to that. It comes back at the end, when the empire is standing. 2 problems answered then. Something to build with. A power source the class has at least touched, which leaves the one that killed the octopus. Does any of it survive the animal that learned it? What is the oldest thing a crow knows? In the year 2000, Gavin Hunt and Russell Gray walked New Caledonia with a very unglamorous plan. New Caledonian crows make tools out of the leaves of the pandanus tree. They cut a tapering strip out of the leaf edge, keeping the barbs on one side, and use it to lever grubs out of dead wood. The leaf keeps the counterfoil, the exact negative of what was removed, so every tool ever made leaves a permanent receipt on the plant. So the two of them went and read the receipts. 5,550 tools from 21 sites across the whole range of the behavior. A museum collection assembled entirely by birds. What came out of it is the single most important fact in this episode. There are 3 designs, not one. A wide tool, a narrow tool, and a stepped tool. The stepped one made in stages, which is a more elaborate manufacture than the other 2. The designs are consistent within a site and different between sites. And there is no ecological reason for the pattern. Not the trees, not the prey, not the terrain. Birds in one valley make it one way, because that is how it is made in that valley. Hunt and Gray argued the designs are related, that the complicated ones are descended from the simple ones, modified and passed on. Cumulative technological evolution. not one animal solving a problem. A method with a history being handed down a line of animals, changing slightly as it goes. That is the beginning of the thing the octopus can never have. And it is worth being precise about the scale of it. This is a handful of designs on one island, not a technology tree. Nobody is claiming otherwise. But it is the difference between 0 and 1, and 0 to 1 is the hardest step in the sequence. Then there is what a crow knows about other minds. In 2001, Nathan Emery and Nicola Clayton put western scrub jays in a situation with a knife edge in it. A jay hides food, either in private or while another jay watches. Later, alone, it gets the chance to move its caches. The birds that had been watched went back and re-hid. Recatching climbed from roughly 6 or 8% when they had been alone to somewhere between 28 and 44% when they had an audience. That alone is impressive. The knife edge is the second finding. Only the birds that had themselves stolen from someone else's cache did it. Jays with no history of thieving barely recatched at all. Watched or not. Read that again slowly. The bird is not following a rule about being observed. It is using its own experience of being a thief to work out what the watcher is likely to do, and it protects itself accordingly. The innocent birds do not, because they do not know what a thief knows. An animal that has to have been a criminal before it can imagine one. And then the part that turns a lifetime into a lineage. John Marsloff's group at the University of Washington trapped and banded wild American crows on campus while wearing a rubber caveman mask. They also walked the same paths in a different mask as a control. The trapped birds learned the dangerous face. That is not surprising. What happened next is, the birds scolded and dive-bombed that mask for years. The reaction spread to crows that had never been trapped, that had only seen it happen, and then to crows that had not even been there. After a 5-year gap in the research, roughly half the birds encountered on those paths still mobbed the caveman, with no measurable decay in the recognition. A specific human face, learned by a handful of animals, taught outward and downward through a population to birds that were never harmed and in some cases had not yet hatched. When it happened. That is, information outliving the individual that acquired it. That is the library. It is a small library. One face. 3 leaf designs. A territory. Nothing in it accumulates the way our knowledge accumulates, and there is no reason to assume it ever would. But go back to the lamp post one more time. That pole has been a landmark in an occupied territory for a long time now. A perch, a lookout, a boundary marker, handed from bird to bird through more generations than the supermarket ever had customers. Nobody alive remembers what the light was for. They remember that the pole is theirs. 3 problems. 3 answers, all of them partial, none of them a promise. So the only honest question left is the arithmetic one. How long would something like this actually take? Where does the number come from? Not from a model of crows. There is no such model. It comes from 2 pieces of measured history and a bit of division. The first is our own skull. 3 and a bit million years ago, an Australopithecus brain case held around 450 cubic centimeters. A grapefruit. Ours holds about 1,350. Something closer to a bowling ball, if a bowling ball were made of jelly and used about 1/5 of everything you eat. Tripled. In 3 million years. And when Andrew Dew's team looked closely at how that happened, published in 2018, the shape of it was not a staircase of sudden leaps. It was mostly gradual increase inside existing species, with the average dragged up further as larger-brained species appeared, and smaller-brained ones died out. No miracle required, just persistent selection pointing the same direction for a very long time. The second piece is the one from Colorado, Corral Bluffs. Rat-sized survivors to sheep-sized descendants, a 35-fold jump in the maximum size of a mammal, inside 700,000 years of the worst day in the history of large animals. So, 3 million years to triple a brain, 700,000 years to rebuild the top of a food web from scratch. 10 million years is more than 3 times the first and more than 14 times the second. Whatever else this is, it is not a rushed timetable. It is an absurdly generous one. Everything from this point on is speculation. Not a forecast, not a projection, a reconstruction of one path out of an enormous number, built out of things we have measured. Evolution has no destination and nothing here is owed to anybody. This is what it might look like if the pressure happened to point this way. It very probably points somewhere else. "10,000 years out. The world is quiet and thin. The recovery is barely underway. Most of the big animals that went with us are still gone, and the ones replacing them are small. The lamppost is a stump about knee-high, the top 2/3 having come down in a storm nobody recorded, and the bolt plate is a red smear in the soil. The birds are still recognizably crows. Nothing dramatic has happened to them. What has changed is what they are doing all day. The cities that fed them are gone, and the ones that persist are the ones that got better at extraction, at getting food out of places that require a procedure. Not one procedure. A procedure per problem. Learned from a neighbor held by a valley. 1 million years out. Now there is something to look at. On an island group that has been isolated long enough to matter, there is a corvid the size of a raven with a beak that has stopped being a general-purpose instrument. The upper mandible carries a fine hooked tip. The lower is broadened and flattened where it meets, so the two together can grip a splinter of wood and hold it against pressure. The feet have gone the other way, heavier, with a stiffened toe that works as a clamp. This is not a hand. It is a vice with a mind attached, and it does a thing that no crow alive today can do. It holds a workpiece steady while it works on it. They are not making fire. They are living near it, following burns, waiting out the front, and there is a behavior spreading through some populations that involves moving a smoldering stick from one place to another and standing back. Whether it goes any further is genuinely unknown. Most such behaviors do not. 10 million years out. You could stand in this landscape and not be able to name a single species in it. The continents have moved a few hundred kilometers. The climate has been through several complete personalities. And the animals working the shoreline in front of you are, in ancestry, crows. They are not people with feathers. That is the daydream, and it is worth killing. They have not got upright posture, or a spoken grammar, or a city. What they have is smaller and stranger. Structures, not nests, assembled from cut material, occupied by the same lineage for centuries, with the same design repeated up the coast, because that is how it is done here. Objects that are kept rather than used and dropped. Fire that is not made but is fed in one region by animals that appear to understand it as a possession. And a set of behaviors around the young that no corvid today has. Adults that put a partly finished object in front of an inexperienced bird and take it back when it is done wrong. That last one is the whole empire. Not the beak, not the fire. The correction. 30 meters beneath all of it, compressed into a bed of sandstone, there is a rust-colored smear about the width of a dinner plate and a scatter of gray chemical residue around it that a geologist would eventually recognize as concrete. Nothing standing on top of that rock has any way of knowing it is there. So, is this a prediction? No. And I want to be exact about why, because the difference is the whole value of the exercise. Everything you were shown in the last 10 minutes is invented. What is not invented is the audit. 3 problems, and one lineage that has a partial answer to each of them, measured, published, and checkable. The equipment, 1.2 billion neurons in a 14-gram brain, wired at 3 to 4 times primate density, running a mind built on a completely separate architecture from ours. The manipulation, a beak and 2 feet that already shape material across a whole species, not one gifted individual. The foresight, an animal that chooses a tool now for a job that does not exist yet, turns down food to do it. The power source, not solved, not remotely, but a bird has carried fire deliberately, and that is a raptor's achievement, not a crow's, and it stays that way until somebody shows otherwise. And the library, 3 tool designs held by geography, a mind that models another mind, and a human face taught outward to birds that never saw it. That is not a civilization. It is a set of seeds, in one clade, in the same animal at the same time. Nowhere else on this planet are all 3 sitting in one lineage. That is the finding. Everything after it is a story. And a seed is not a promise. Most lineages that had a head start went nowhere with it. The odds against any particular one of them are enormous, and if you ran this planet again from today, the overwhelming likelihood is that nothing takes the chair at all. That the world just gets on with being a world, full of animals doing exactly what they already do, for tens of millions of years, and no one ever wonders about any of it. We are not the shape of the future. We are the one time it happened. And even the story has an expiry date. In 2023, Alexander Farnsworth's team modeled the climate of the next supercontinent, Pangaea Ultima, assembling roughly 250 million years from now, and found up to 92% of the land surface uninhabitable. That simulation was run for mammals. It says nothing directly about birds, and 250 million years is about 25 times further out than anything in this episode. The point is not the number. The point is the pattern behind it. This planet has never let anything keep the top of it. Not the trilobites, not the great reptiles, not the mammoth fauna, and not us. A crow empire, if there ever were one, would be a chapter, and chapters end the way all of them end here, in a layer of rock somebody else stands on. There is a stain in that sandstone the width of a dinner plate. It was a lamppost on a road outside a shop where people bought things on their way home. And on the rock above it this morning, a bird lands, turns its head, and looks down at something it is about to pick up. There is already an episode waiting for you. The ice comes back, and there is a plateau in northern Canada where the snow simply stops melting. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, the channel does one of these properly every week, and subscribing is how you get told when the next one is up. Thanks for staying to the end of it.